How do you find your ICP, your ideal customer profile? So there's a lot of ways in which you can find your ICP, and I'm going to walk you through sort of one of them, or at least one aspect, which I think people should sort of use when they're trying to decide on ICP. So of course, you have a specific product, it has a certain value, there's a certain market for which it is relevant. Like that has a lot of considerations around who your ICP is. But if you're currently selling to, let's say, a certain type of customers, and you're still not sort of you're still sort of worried a little bit about where your sort of ideal customers, you kind of know, okay, we sell to whatever, manufacturing companies, but exactly what kind, we want to sort of narrow it down, then especially this method can work. And this is also in so many words, whenever we're working with PE companies and they are taking over a company, we're saying, hey, we have a customer base here, how do we trim this and sort of like focus on the part of the business that's really good and maybe cut away the rest. This is also how we run it. So I've called this section sort of ICP math because it's like we are trying to sort of show a spreadsheet here on a whiteboard, but I'm going to sort of walk you through a little bit how we run the numbers in sort of an example. So in this example, we actually have a customer with 40 million of revenue and ARR, and they have 1,285 customers, and they have an 8% churn rate, and in the last 12 months, they got 113 new customers. So it's like, it's a good business, right? We're growing sort of customer base around 10%, 8% year over year. We have a $40 million business. We're sort of churning out sort of 8%. So it feels like, okay, we're growing 9% a year, and we're churning out 8 in some across the customers. So maybe this is sort of kind of stagnant. So we're not really moving. So the question is, okay, are we doing anything wrong? Is there something that we could focus on? What should we do? So the first thing we do is that we take all the customers in a spreadsheet, and you can do that with your customers too, and you basically sort them from high to low on revenue. And then you basically say, okay, so we have 40 million of revenue in this example, so now we're gonna count 10 million revenue down. So 25% of the 40 million, that's 10 million, we're gonna count that down, and then we're gonna say, hey, these 10 million of revenue, and then we see, okay, that turned out to be the first 10 accounts, the 10 largest accounts. And then the next 10 million is gonna be, let's say, 25 accounts, and then the next 10 million is going to be, let's say, 250, and then the next 10 million is going to be 1,000. So your numbers and your distribution is going to be a little bit different, but what we usually look at is how many accounts are in this quartile. So quartile meaning that we have 4 equal chunks of revenue, how many customers are here, and how many are here. Here the ratio is 1 to 100. So 10 versus 1,000. So there's 100 times more customers in this 10 million block than there is in this 10 million block, which is actually quite normal. So we have done hundreds and hundreds of these for our clients, and this is sort of a pattern we see. If your ratio is, let's say, 20, you probably have a problem. You're probably under monetizing your larger accounts, and you have a large untapped potential in your long tail, one of the two. So basically we're looking sort of at the ratios here. So the reason that this kind of segmentation is effective is that now the different customer chunks we have an equal revenue weight. So instead of talking about, oh, small, medium, large accounts, and large is anyone over $1 million, and small is anyone under like whatever 1,000, and that might mean that now your large category might be 40% of your revenue, and your small category might be 20% of your revenue, and now they're not sort of quite comparable because, well, one is more important than the other because it's just more revenue. But if you do it this way, by definition, they have the same weight, like they have the same importance in terms of just like raw, right now, revenue numbers. So this is a really good way to just like, okay, now we actually get to compare them and see what's going on. Then of course, we can calculate the average value of the account. So 10 million of revenue on 10 accounts, the average contract value per year is 1 million. Here's 400K, here's 40K, and here's 10K. So it looks like we're selling stuff from like a ratio of 1 to 100, which sort of makes sense because this is also the 1 to 100, from 1 million down to 10K. And probably in this long tail, you're gonna have accounts all the way down to, let's say, maybe even sub 1K, but you're gonna have some accounts at a few thousand, and you're gonna have some up to like 20, 30,000, and then this average sort of kicks in and so forth. So you actually have sort of a really big range. And of course, up here, you might have a single account that's worth 5 million, right? That is actually sort of majority of the revenue. So you can have a very, very large spread in at least a lot of the customer portfolios we see. And then of course you say, okay, so now you have a range because you're gonna have a cutoff revenue here and you're gonna have a cutoff revenue here, and say, okay, so how many of these types of customers churned in the last year. And now you get a different churn number. So maybe you had 20% customer churn here, which would be like 200 accounts. And then here you might have a 5% customer churn. And here you had maybe also 5% customer churn. And here you had a 3% customer churn. So if you actually take this and multiply it to the revenue, you get to around 8%, a little over, right, on churn. The next thing you look at is, okay, fair enough, that's how it looks, that this is how many customers we're losing. Well, how many are we gaining? So how many new customers are we gaining in these revenue segments? And then you say, okay, maybe last year, 12 months, matching the churn numbers, we got 1, 2, 10, and 100 customers, just as an example. And this now allows you to say, okay, so if this churn rate is stable, and you can of course check that historically and so forth, what does that mean? Well, it means that over time, like next year, I will get another customer, so I will go to 11. So that's great. And then will it churn one of those? That's unlikely. Then I'll go to 12, then I'll go to 13, and then maybe 1 year I'll gain one and I'll lose one, and then the next year I'll gain one and gain one, and then I'll lose one and I'll gain 3 more. And then it will even out at 33 accounts. Because at 33 accounts, I'm going to get one every year, and then also statistically I'm going to lose one, and that means that I'm going to be stable here. So this is your plateau. This is where you're not going to grow anymore unless you start to sell more or you reduce your churn. Here, you basically take the sales number and you divide by churn. So 2 divided by 0.05, so that's 5%. So that's 40. Here you have this, so you have 200. And here you have this, so that is 500. So now you get to sort of see an end game for your business, right? You say, okay, so what are we targeting right now? So right now we have like 10, 25, 250, 1,000 accounts, but the way our churn is working right now is that we are going to end up with 33, 40, 200, 500. So we're actually going to end up with 773 accounts. So actually a significant drop from where we are, because it seems like we're losing our long tail faster than we're getting it, right? So we're losing 200 accounts a year, we're only getting 100, so we're actually going to go down here. Here we're losing a little bit more than we're gaining, so we're losing 5% of this, so that's 12 and a half, and we're only getting 10, so we're also losing here, but here we're growing and here we're growing. So this might actually be a good sign, because actually it seems we're losing here. And then we can say, okay, so what is the plateau revenue that we're getting for? So now you take the 33 and you multiply it by the ACV, so that means that you get 33 million. You take 40 times 400, so that's 16 million. You take 200 times this, I think that is 8 million. And then you take 500 times this, so that's going to be 5 million. And then you add it up and say, okay, so our 40 million business is going to be 9, 17, 22, 52 million at one point. So this is where we're going, right? So, okay, so you can say, well, it's better than 40, right? So we're still growing, but we have a lot of dynamics going on inside our customer portfolio. So what should we do? You can then do sort of a lifetime value calculation on this and say, okay, so what is the lifetime value of one of the accounts that we have? And then you can compare that to your acquisition cost. So we ran out a whiteboard here, but let's say the lifetime value right now is your ACV divided by churn. So actually the lifetime value here is 33 million. So one account over the 30 years, you're going to keep these customers, right? So over that span of time, you're going to make 30 plus million in this account. Here is 400K divided by your churn rate. So that's also going to be 16 million that you're going to make on these guys. And then over here, it's going to be a lot less, 1.6. And then down here, 10K, this is 50K, right? So you can say, okay, so we're gonna have a 50K lifetime value here. We're gonna have it's an 800K here, and it's a 8 million here, sorry. 8 million, 800K, 40K here. And then you can say, okay, compared to what it costs us to get one of these customers, where does it make sense? So if I have a whopping 30 million one here, and I have an 8 million one here, then it means that I can outspend to get one of these accounts significantly more than it needs to be here. So if this was my business right now, I would say, hey, this is actually moving in the right direction. I know that we're shrinking customers and we have an 8% churn rate, but for the really good segments, if we can get more of these accounts, we can just focus here, like in this range, and just get this number maybe to, if we get this one to 5, if we get this one to 10, And then screw this, we're just not gonna sell any more of these. Let's just move out. So we just did this number instead and then say, hey, is that better than 52? If we get 5 like this divided by 33, then suddenly we'd get 160 accounts, a little bit more, right? And then here, if we got 10 of these, we'd end up with 200 accounts like this. So we'd end up here, we'll do it here. 200 accounts here, and we'd end up with 160 there. We'll do the math after. And then here, we're obviously gonna end up with 0. And here we're gonna end up with 0. Let's see what happens here. So 160 is now gonna be 160 million. And here at 400K, but we have 200 of them, we're gonna do another 80 million here. So we're gonna do that. And then the 52 million suddenly turns into 240 million. So by simply saying, hey, maybe instead of trying to build all of these sales numbers where we're trying to sort of land all of these accounts, maybe we should absolutely defocus on the long tail. And mind you, some of these accounts are gonna be like 200K accounts or 100K accounts, at least if the average is 40K in this cohort. And you're just now, your job as the CEO or the CRO of this company, just gonna say, that is not our business model. We're gonna go all in on focusing on these mega accounts, so we're not gonna sell anything below $250,000, and then we're gonna target a lot more of these guys, and then we're hoping to just like get 5 of these and 10. So if we can go from, I think it was over 3 customers a year here to 15, and then we're just gonna let all these 100 and however many was 20 down here, then 120s go. So we're actually gonna reduce the amount of customers here, which also means that these are gonna churn a lot faster because we're not gonna refill them. So actually this number is gonna drop significantly, right? Because instead of the 700-800 accounts, we're gonna end up with 360 accounts, but those 360 are gonna be worth 5 times as much. One thing, of course, again, is what is the product you sell? Who are you selling it to? What does the market think of your value proposition? All these things. But if you're already in a market and you're selling sort of a range of customers, you can look at it this way and say, hey, where does it make sense for us to just do more? And if we can just do more here by shifting resources and focus and intention also in our product to these types of accounts, maybe in 5 or 6 years, we're gonna have a $240 million business and not a $50 million business. So that's sort of the ICP math that I wanted to leave you with today. Do this exercise for you. Have that conversation in your leadership team. Good luck with it. Cheers.